Hello and welcome to the 495. I'm your host, Doug Sparks, editor-in-chief of Merrimack Valley Magazine, live from my dining room table so that I can brew some coffee on air in tribute to our guests. Lou, how are you doing this week? Can you hear me?
Very good. This is a little different. We get a nice setup here. You're not in your garage.
I'm not in my garage. It's warm. It's like paradise.
Yep. No leaf blowers. Nothing going on.
No leaf blowers. No neighbors with bizarre devices that they don't need. You know, I'm a rake and shovel guy. Anything that keeps the neighborhood quiet, I'm for. So I'm preserved from all of that inside. Who knows? Maybe my dog will get set off and she'll ruin the show. My little
all right. So why are we doing this? Why are we set up like this?
That's a good question. We're set up like this because I wanted to brew some coffee this week live on air, and I'm actually going to try this for the first time. I have two samples from our guests. I have their Colombian and their Honduran. I'm going to try the Honduran, which I hear is fantastic, and I will drink it for the first time in some of their ceramics too, and we'll talk about that. Before we get into coffee and before we introduce the guests, though, I wanted to make a suggestion to you.
Yes.
I remember in the early days of the 495, you told me to watch the Laurel Canyon documentary on Netflix.
Yeah.
Remember this?
Yes.
There's a new Laurel Canyon documentary on Amazon/Epix.
Yeah.
So you have to do that thing where you have to subscribe for free for a week to watch it. It's unbelievable.
Is it?
It's two parts. It's like a 3-hour split documentary. If you're a music fan, you have to watch it. And they do a number of things really, really well, including focusing on some of the groups from that scene that were very, very important, very, very talented, but don't often get enough credit because they didn't have the kind of national success. Like the band Love. You probably know the band Love.
Yep.
Love were sort of stymied for a number of reasons, all sorts of bad luck and racism because there were two black guys in the band. There's all sorts of things, just bad record deals, all that kind of stuff. And this thing that happened with them with the Doors, where they were like promoting the Doors to get out of a record deal.
Oh, really?
But then the Doors took off, which meant the Doors siphoned off all the marketing money that was supposed to go to the band Love. Anyway, it's just a beautiful film, and it gets a lot into the culture and the history of the time. So there's stuff about Manson and Bobby Beausoleil and all the sort of weird things percolating in the world at that time. It doesn't shy away from the politics. So it's and more than all of that, the performance footage is fantastic. I saw footage of bands that I'm familiar with that I really like that I've never seen before, and where you really get a sense of how good they were and how crazy that time was, right? That this small little patch of land out in California hills, all these different talented people were magnetized by it. It's a little bit like middle of the 19th century in our area, where you had Herman Melville and you had Hawthorne and you had all these people coming into, Emerson, Thoreau, all these people coming into this one little area. Margaret Fuller, magnetized by something. And within the short period of time, they produced all this great work. So anyways, if you get a chance, Lou, that's my recommendation for this week, is the Laurel Canyon documentary.
I knew it existed, but I don't have access to Epic. So you just pushed me over the edge. I'm going to have to get some access.
Well, you just need to do the free 1-week trial.
And I'll hand it back to you. There's on Pluto, they have a live music channel, and they're currently running a documentary on guitars called Crank It Up. And it's just
there we go. I've seen that. It has Jack White on it.
Yep.
Okay, yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, I saw it when it first came out.
Lots of great players, and lots of talk about guitars and the evolution of starting, how great they were and how they get mass produced and kind of slipped off and worked their way back to it. I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah, fantastic. That's the scene with Jimmy Page is sitting there listening to who was it?
I forget now.
I can't remember. The guy who did Rumble, Link Ray.
Yeah.
He's sitting there and he suddenly becomes like a 12-year-old kid. Like he's hearing this Link Ray single and he's like, oh, listen to this part. And you hear the chord ring out and he's so like wrapped up in it. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Our guests this week are Jon Santos and Kate Cutlip from Tiny Arms Roaster in Lowell. Did I get that right? Can you guys hear me? Oh, you're still on mute.
Get on mute, yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Kate and Jon, how are you guys doing?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. No complaints. So the roastery or the cafe hasn't opened yet. There are going to be people, who've never heard of you, don't know what you're doing. So tell us what's up. What's going on at Western Ave Studios with the cafe?
Yeah. Well, we took over the loading dock on A Mill. So that's the first building you come in. You just kind of see the Western Ave logo, which the 2 dumpsters, we took over that loading dock area there. We're opening a small cafe / roastery. We're gonna have various of handcrafted coffees, some waffles, some other pastries, retail coffee, retail goods.
Yeah.
Why there? Why you're going to do it in this? And for people who don't know Western Ave, it's art galleries and there's art studios there. They do these open studios when the weather gets a little bit nicer and people can come in and shop the artists and kind of see what people are up to in the art scene. Why did you choose to do this here instead of a more conventional space?
Ideally, we could have opened up somewhere like a main street somewhere or a town center in a different town, but we wanted to be kind of, the way we do coffee is a slower pace. So we wanted to kind of bring that back to people. I know there's plenty of Dunkin' Donuts and other big coffee companies in the area, but we're just trying to, have that nice connection with our customers, leading with hospitality and craft great drinks.
Okay, and then Kate, you're also an artist, so there's some tie-in just in terms of like you actually have a studio.
I have a studio in Western Ave, yeah.
As well.
So I guess Lowell wasn't our original plan. Pre-COVID, we were working with thinking of moving to Connecticut, and COVID happened, as it does, and our landlord kind of ghosted us right before we signed the lease. He was like, never mind.
Yeah, after 6 months of...
Like 6 months of working with contractors and like getting all the logistics figured out for the space, he ghosted us. It wasn't awesome. But we had to kind of start from square one, and one of my friends, Katie, she's has a candle company in Western Ave called So Much Brighter. And she's like, I like my studio here. And so we went to look at a studio for me. And once we were talking to the landlord and some other people there, they were like, oh, coffee, that could be cool. And so it kind of just naturally, organically fell into place. And it was like, okay, this is meant to be.
Yeah, I like that pairing, and I've probably mentioned this to you when we met before. I went and actually, this is one of your designs. This is one of your mugs, which I will be drinking from today. I'm one of those weirdos who really geeks out on tea and coffee, and I sort of have a foot in both worlds. Tea culture is significantly older, is a significantly deeper history, and ceramics is a huge part of it. There are brewing vessels you would only use with particular types of tea in China. The cups and the artistry, there were whole art galleries in Japan just for matcha bowls. We don't really have that so much in the coffee scene, probably I think just because coffee is still relatively young.
Yeah.
But to me, that pairing of those two things makes perfect sense. Like this is the frontier, right? Of kind of pairing these things where people are used to like, styrofoam.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think about that?
They're strictly out of styrofoam.
All right. But do you think about that relationship between what you're doing in terms of coffee and what you're doing in terms of art?
Yeah. So that was actually kind of part of the original plan, I guess, pre-COVID. Was we wanted to create a full experience from like what you're drinking to what you're drinking out of. So to kind of complete that whole thing, it's not just a mass-produced cup that you would get at a cafe made at IKEA or what have you. So like the vessel is almost just as important part of the process as what is inside of it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned sustainability and you mentioned something about your just philosophy on your website, and I wanted for people who don't know who you are, once again, what is that? What are you trying to do philosophically here? Why is it important to be sustainable, and what does that involve?
Yeah, so I have worked in cafes for 8 years, and the waste is just so high from plastic, the single-use cups, coffee thrown out and not having a proper shelf life for everything. It's so wasteful. So we wanted to really, really kind of nitpick everything that we were doing. So for example, our single-use cups are made from cane sugar. They break down after 45 days, or 40 to 60 days, they start breaking down, which is great. Our retail boxes are fully recyclable. We were trying to do compostable, but we couldn't find the right materials or suppliers that are local here in the States. So for us, everything is just for convenience. Everything is made here in the States as well. All of our paper goods, it's made here in the States. And we just really wanted to focus on that aspect. And
Yes, like do whatever little things we can do to make an impact.
Yeah, because another thing too, we also have an electric roaster compared to most roasters, as you know, is propane or natural gas used, and ours is a Bellwether smart coffee roaster, and we have solar panels on the roof as well. So we're just trying to do our part. If we were going to make another coffee shop, we wanted to at least do it sustainable, and we're trying to do that.
You both roast?
I roast. Kate will soon be roasting as well.
Okay, and how did you learn? What's the process of learning to roast coffee for you?
Yeah, so I started roasting for a small coffee shop on the Cape called Snowy Owl. I was their head roaster. It was a lot of trial and error, trying other people's coffee and like, how come my coffee can't taste like that? So either over roasted or under roasted, and it's a lot of science that goes with it, trying to understand and the chemistry behind it. For me, now we're doing small batches and trying it and kind of just aiming to do the best we can. So we just constantly trying to improve each roast.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask, I don't know how well people can see this. I have a sample bag that I'm going to be brewing soon. Who does the illustrations? What's the story behind these? There's this sort of a Beatles-esque yellow submarine on this, and I don't know if people can see, but it looks to me like there might be a little T-Rex guiding that thing, which will be, I'm deliberately not showing my kids, because if they see that little T-Rex, this thing is gone. There's anything T-Rex related that's it. They lose their minds. So what about the marketing? Why this type of imagery? Why these type of colors? Why'd you go with that?
So we wanted to do something playful. Kate has a great collection of children's book. So that's where the playful side came in for it. And the T-Rex, it's the name of our company. It's called Tiny Arms. You want to tell the story?
Yeah.
Kate explains it better.
So when Jon and I had just started dating, we took a trip to New York to go back to the neighborhood that I had just finished school in. I went to Pratt Institute in Brooklyn, New York. And we were walking through a neighborhood and we were playing a game where whatever we saw on the sidewalk, or we created like funny business names off of it. So like there was a block where there was like just TVs in front of everyone's house. Like everyone had TVs on the sidewalk. So we were making up names based off of that. I don't know. But we walked through this area and there was a T-Rex on the wall. And I was like, you could call a business Tiny Arms. That would be funny. And we were like, yeah, so silly. And then here we are, 3 years later, we have a business called Tiny Arms.
And that's our logo is a T-Rex for that reason, because they have small arms. One of our friends pointed this out, which is not related to how we came up with the name. I just thought it was kind of funny. When you're doing ceramics on the wheel, your arms are in, and you're trying to kind of like your arms are kind of small.
Yeah, that was almost my first thought, as I was thinking maybe it's some sort of ceramic thing. But then I saw the T-Rex and I'm like,
Maybe not.
maybe it's more than that. So I have a question. There's a number of well-loved coffee places in Lowell. Some that have been around for a long time, like Brewed, and some that are new, like Nibbana. And I'm wondering about your relationship with the coffee scene in this area. Do you have partnerships? Is there anything going on with locals who people may have heard of?
Yeah, well, we're planning to sell our coffee with down the line, probably sometime in next month once we get everything figured out in our space. But yeah, I mean, we have been introducing ourselves there, but we haven't. Besides them, I think that's the only other coffee company that we reached out to.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of them right now are in sort of hibernation as we try to figure out what's going on with
Exactly.
this pandemic. I was in Nibbana a couple days ago, and the owner was raving about this particular one. She was raving about the Honduran.
Awesome.
So it got me excited, and she seemed to have a little bit of a glow in her eyes when she talked about you guys. So she seems to be very interested in sort of the work you're doing right now. And they're very cool. If people haven't been to Nibbana, go check it out. You can only sit there for half an hour. I used to sit there and actually work and edit and write. But now my time is limited. Jon, you grew up in Brazil. You spent a little time in Brazil. Brazil is one of the great coffee countries in the world. Is that where some of the influence comes from? Do you remember that from your childhood?
So I was there really young, and my grandma actually has a farm where it's mainly cattle, but she did grow her own coffee. And it wasn't specialty coffee. It was just a few coffee trees. And when it was time, we would pick the cherries, she would roast it, and then we'll grind it in this stone bowl. And then we just drink it with milk and sugar. But the beautiful thing about that was that fellowship that we had with coffee. Everyone would get so excited and huddle around the kitchen when it was time to drink coffee in the morning. It was just a really magical time for me to look back. I mean, that's where the love for coffee came in.
So before I turn it over to Lou and start brewing, this brings up one more question I have to ask. Do you have favorite coffees, a particular region, a particular varietal, or a particular drink that you like, both of you?
I mean, so for me, I tend to, before starting our own company, we always used to rotate roasters. And for me, I really enjoy Ethiopian coffee. I know that's a cliche answer, but I just really love bright and acidic coffee. I had actually one coffee from George Howe, Ukro, and it tasted just like watermelons. That was amazing to me to try that. And I had one from Brandywine, which was from
Delaware,
yeah, and they have along my.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
Burundi. They had a coffee from Burundi. It was a natural process, and it was just a beautiful cup. It was nice and balanced of acidics and sweetness, and it was light and delicate. More tea-like than coffee, but it was just still a great cup of coffee. So I guess I tend to like more naturals than wash.
Yeah, and before we ask Kate what her favorite drink is, there's going to be people, watching who are curious about coffee, but they're not really going to understand processing and what that is. So just kind of in a nutshell, when you talk about natural processing, what does that mean? What are the alternatives? Why is that important?
Yeah, so there's, just to break it down really easy, it would be wash, semi-wash, and natural process. And it's just how much cherry they leave on the coffee seed as they're drying it. And that, different amount of cherry or the flesh of the cherry is left on there, gives different flavors. Natural process tends to be a little more fruity, and then when your wash be nice and clean, and semi in between there.
Sure. Kate, what's your favorite? What's your drink of choice?
My honest drink of choice, or my
okay, you could do both. You can do both, because there's this thing that people do sometimes who are in the industry where they talk about like, oh yeah, my favorite of course is like an Ethiopian or something like that. But then in private they'll make like a latte with like two pumps of mint or something like. There's the public favorite, and then there's when I really want something that's a special treat, I do this. So you go ahead and do both.
So
your favorite and then your favorite.
I don't have a background in coffee. Everything I've learned from Jon. But over the last few months, we've been doing so many cuppings and just like constantly drinking coffee. And I've really realized that I like lighter, fruitier coffees much more than like the darker New England coffee. So that's been fun. I love the Honduras. I'm loving that right now. But if I was to go out, I'd probably get a cortado. That's usually like my go-to.
Yeah. Usually around there too.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I think there was a time in third wave coffee where the tendency was towards like snobbery,
Yes.
about these kind of things. It's like, oh, you're going to put milk in it. And I do that too. But believe me, I can totally be a coffee snob and I can do that too. But at the same time, with, with a hint of a smile, at least, it's not that important, right? It's all good. All these drinks are delicious. We're all having a good time. Everything's delicious. It's no problem.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
going back to my drinking coffee with my family in Brazil, some of the coffee looked like charcoal, which I have a weak spot for that kind of coffee. It's nostalgic for me. So, add your cream, a little bit of sugar, and I occasionally drink it that way. And it's nice, and it's
yeah,
fun.
my dirty secret is occasionally, especially if I'm brewing something that isn't very nice. I wouldn't do it with this. But if I get something from Trader Joe's and the budget that week doesn't allow for the high-end stuff, I'll put spices in the coffee. There are people in third wave coffee where if you said I put, whatever, cardamom pods in my coffee, would just be like, no way, man, beneath me, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's all good, whatever you enjoy, and it's fun to experiment. So what I'm going to do, Lou, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to mute myself so that you're not hearing all the boiling and all the fussing going on. You'll be able to watch me, and Lou is going to ask a few questions of you, and then I will enjoy the Honda and live on air. You ready to go, Lou?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to mute now.
All right, so Jon, I'm going to start with what are you drinking? And feel free to lie if you want to.
No. I'm drinking a Colombian cold brew. It was just a wash process. Really clean and very easy to drink.
Okay, you guys have been talking about your backstory in terms of the business, and Jon obviously come from a coffee background, and Kate, you come from an art background. I want to know about the business backstory here, and I want to know which one of you brings a business acumen to this startup business, because you guys took your passions and you decided to start a business, which is basically jumping into the deep end of the business pool. And then a car drove into the pool in the form of COVID while you're in there. So tell us about your experience starting up a business in Massachusetts during COVID, or trying to get it off the ground during COVID.
Yeah, it's definitely challenging, and that's for sure. We were trying to get an SBA loan. We were trying to find different grants, and unfortunately, we didn't apply for any.
Well, no, we applied for them. We didn't qualify for them.
Yeah.
Thank you. We applied to them and we didn't qualify. So unfortunately, that's where we ended up with that. But Kate and I actually just got married in October, and we took most of that money and started a business with that.
Mm-hmm. Which one of you is the business leader in the partnership?
I feel like we have different strengths that balance well. Jon's like the dreamer, and I'm like the rational thinker. I would say.
Yeah. So you have the checkbook, Kate, right?
Yeah, Kate has a checkbook.
I'm like, well, what did we buy at Web Restaurant? Like, did we need that?
Yeah. Right. So, what was your biggest pleasant surprise about starting the business, and what was the thing that you didn't know about that, like, oh wow, how do we deal with this?
Yeah. So I guess the community outreach. Everyone here, and actually even online too, have been super positive and excited about us opening up a cafe and roastery here at Western Ave. It's just really nice because sometimes it felt like it was a bigger challenge, or it's definitely difficult during now. But
it was like we were surprised with how much support we got from like other coffee professionals and other people who could possibly be like competition. Like it's been kind of more almost like a family. Like we've gotten to know some people really well, and that's been really a pleasant surprise.
Was that a surprise to you, Jon? Because it sounds, if I have your backstory incorrect, you can fill it out, but it sounds like you picked up a love of coffee from an early age and just brought it through and have worked in the industry and worked your way up and networked within the industry, correct?
Correct. Yeah. I'm always surprised when, because we have other friends that have their own roasting companies that do wholesale. It's very similar to us. And they're so open to how they roast or what's their approach to doing the wholesale side, which is really nice, even though we're technically competition. But there is that mutual respect that we're doing different things and they're doing different things. Even though we're all selling coffees, different.
But it sounds like it's the original, or it seems to me the impression I get is it's the original craft beer business. Craft beer wasn't the original craft beer business, coffee was. And, you know, I'm a Dunkin' Donuts guy, I'll freely admit it. So all these different strains and different ways to roast and all the things that are available to you for options, it's always surprising to me, but this has been going on for a long time. So I'm guessing it's a friendly environment from a business standpoint between competitors because there's just so much room to do your own thing.
Totally.
Yeah, and that's where, for the most part, I would say it's, some people have some mindsets like, oh no, this is my secret, this is my business. And I understand that, because it's a business. And, but for the most part, people have been super open and welcoming. We have people on the other side of the country reaching out, asking for coffee, which is great,
And with any craft beer, any craft business, and we're talking about craft coffee here, it's about image, it's about the brand that you put out and things like that. And I'm sure, Kate, you have a big role in that, and the ceramics have to give the brand an image, right? You must be very conscious of that while you're creating.
Yeah, technically the ceramics started first. I've been doing the tiny arm ceramics for a few years. So it's developed, but as we're getting closer to opening, it's been fun. I've been taking some time to like reevaluate designs and stuff like that and try to find a way to like meld our branding together to be more cohesive, which has been fun to play around with a little bit more.
Doug intimated that there might be actually some technical aspects to drinking coffee in terms of the cup and the mug and what you use. Have you, as Jon read you into that, how do we make a coffee mug different than we make a mug in general?
Well, there's a lot of different, it's all about comfort, right? So what feels comfortable in your hand? So if the handle or handleless feels nice in your hand, that's very important. We also found that if the mug is the ceramic, is a little bit thicker than most, it holds the heat a bit longer. So that's another key thing. And then the brim makes it or break it, I think, because that's when you're coming into contact of drinking it. And I think, if it's not comfortable on the lips, it's not comfortable at all.
Yeah.
So I actually wanted to jump in on this, and I'm sorry, and I'll let you guys continue. It's just a great discussion. There are plenty of coffee places that I know of that serve good coffee where I don't like going because there's no thought in the mug. This is actually really great because of the angle. I mean, one thing you'll get is you'll get a good cup of coffee and it's like a wide, narrow bowl. Yeah. This is great for tea because you want the temperature to come down very quickly, but it's not great for coffee where you're taking these little sips. Because what does that mean? It means you've had a couple sips, it tastes good, you hit the sweet spot, and then all of a sudden it's too cold if it's like this. This traps the heat. This is why you want kind of narrow, this coming in like this, and it is like a really nice thick ceramics. So heat is important, as well as you want it to feel sturdy and comfortable, and you want to be able to.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm surprised when I get feedback, people being like, yeah, there's something about this mug. It makes my drink stay hotter longer than my other mugs, which was not my intention, but it was a happy accident.
Yeah. Well, it is the right shape.
It's funny how big a role those things can play. Doug talking about not going to a place because you don't like the mugs, but man, a bad mug. First of all, again, the coffee cooling too quickly, that's always a big thing, but that feel at the mouth, the thickness of it, the finish of it at the top, it makes a big difference.
Yeah. One thing to play around with a little bit is we like the mugs for like filter coffee or tea. But when we're designing mugs for that are better for latte art and like having like the space to do that, it's a totally different like shape and form, which is like, so different mugs have different purposes totally.
Yeah, I wanted to go back to something that you guys were talking about when I was muted, which is this sense of camaraderie, sense of connection among people in the industry. And it actually goes back to that Laurel Canyon documentary I was talking about at the top of the show. Part of what made that era so exciting and why people were being so creative is they all hung out with each other, traded ideas. It was really fertile ground, and there wasn't like there's like friendly competition, and then there's competition where you're not telling people. And when there's that friendly competition, but people are still open and sharing and learning and working with each other, you have room for this creative explosion. I don't think third wave coffee would have happened if people didn't get along and shared information. And the problem is when people start, when the money gets too big and it starts getting too competitive, then you lose that, but the ideas also start to dry up. You have less creativity. You have less of that feeling of like excitement and exploration of new ways of doing this. In some ways, what you're doing is what they now consider like fourth wave coffee, right? Because fourth wave coffee absorbs all the lessons of third wave about how things are supposed to taste and how you're supposed to take all this care and the science, but is also concerned with the environmental impact. It's concerned with the idea that some farmer, some person got those beans and put them into that cup, and there's a process and there's a path, right? And we can't just, what's cheapest? What is the primary question, knowing that what's cheapest can be disaster for the people down in Ecuador, the people down in Honduras, and the places where they're making this coffee.
Yeah, that was really important to us when sourcing.
Yeah. So, for example, going back to Brazil, when I was growing up, my grandma had a mango tree, and it produced, a decent amount of mangoes. And my mom told me the last couple of years it stopped producing mangoes. It's because of the soil, the environment, microclimate obviously isn't the same what it used to be there. Even my grandma's coffee is not producing as much as it used to. And that's all to do to global warming, Unfortunately, it's much hotter down there now than what it used to be. And and that's going back to our sourcing. We wanted to make sure that our partners, our green partners, were paying their producers a decent or a living wage more than most. And I think you might know this. So the commodity price, I think the average farmer was getting, I could be wrong on this, but at least this was what I was told by my partners, but I think it's $200 US a month per each producer and farmer. But what we paid was a little bit more than that. And we're hoping to do a crop bonus after we finish our green coffee to give back to the producers, to continue to give back to them and, buy their coffee.
Create like a partnership with the farms.
Yeah, and we're aiming to buy their coffee every year.
So this is my first time trying the Honduran. It's very crisp. It has a lot of acidity, which is what you're going for. It has and this for a Dunkin' Donuts person might seem like, what is he talking about? But if you are going down the path of getting these single origin roasts, it has a green apple taste to it. In other words, that kind of crisp, really, really clean, appley sort of bite. And this is really nice. This is my first time trying it. This is fantastic. It's very, very clean. It's very crisp. It's very very subtle. It's really nice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. When we were roasting that coffee for the first time, we tried all different types of profiles. And to me, when we were roasting coffee, I'm not aiming to just do a light roast or a medium roast or a dark. I'm just trying to aim it to what highlights the coffee the best. And so each of our coffee might be a little varied on roast levels, if you may. But we're just trying to highlight certain characteristics as best as possible.
Right. So I'm reading the label here, and you were mentioning different types of processing, and right here it says the process is honey process, but you didn't mention that before. For people who don't know, what's honey process?
Yeah. So it's when they leave the sorry, it slipped my mind here for a second. That's when they leave the flesh, the coffee flesh, a little bit more. There's different types of percentage of how much flesh they leave on there. This is a 10%, so they call it, I believe this is a red or yellow honey process, but there's different types. It's kind of in between a washed and a natural. But yeah, this is a 10% yellow honey process for this kind of roast.
So is that why there's a yellow submarine? Is it finally dawning on me, or is that unrelated?
It's totally unrelated. We just like seeing it.
So the way we design our logos, like I said, we wanted to make it playful, but also we really enjoy Wes Anderson movies, and Life Aquatica was one of my favorite movies, and I kind of wanted to make the first image for the Honduras to be that. And the way we look at it, every time we get a new coffee, there will be a new image. Since we do the designs ourselves, we're able to keep that lively.
Yeah, so I've been following you on Instagram. I've been enjoying Instagram, and I've been following the Ceramic Studio on Instagram. So people definitely go check them out. I've seen you posting recently that pre-orders are shutting down this Friday. So what does that mean? And for people who want to get out there and try your coffee, what does it mean that pre-orders are shutting down Friday? What should they do if they want to get their hands on this stuff?
Yeah, so we're going to be roasting our first batch and shipping it to people. We're going to roast on the 15th, but the pre-order ends on the 12th. That gives us time to organize ourselves and plan what we're going to be roasting. But until we open, this is the only time we can really get our coffee to try at home.
We'll probably be opening the site again for coffee orders, probably not till the end of February or beginning of March.
Okay. So people want to try this, they should get on there now.
Yeah.
They should go order right now. I know it's hard to predict, but when do you think the cafe is going to be open to the world so people can go try in person?
I would say, I would love to say March 1st, but I think sometime in mid to end of March, ideally.
Yeah. What do you picture down the road? Say the pandemic passes, the vaccine comes, everything is kind of safe. Where is Tiny Arms Coffee a year from now, 2 years from now, as it begins to grow? What do you picture?
I don't know. So like I always wanted to have, this is way before Tiny Arms was a thing, when I just had a dream of a coffee shop. I always wanted to have a few locations and offer the best pastries and offer the best coffee we can. But I think with Tiny Arms, we like to keep it small for the most part, and very limited in how we buy our coffees. I don't want to grow much more than this as right now. What are you doing?
I think whatever we do, I want it to happen organically. I don't want to force it to be like, I don't want to go in with like, oh, I want this to be this thing and I have to make it this thing. Like if it happens to be that, then great. But if it pivots in a different direction, like I'm okay with that too. I'm not setting high expectations for it.
I think Lou has put your website has shown it. It's probably in the comments right now. If it's not, I suspect someone will drop it in there. But for people who are listening, who are not watching and just listening, what's your website?
Yeah, it's tinyarms.co.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on the 495 this week. It was fantastic. The coffee's great. I'm happy as can be.
I hope you could come visit when we're open, and everyone as well.
I am looking forward to it. I think it'll be great. And I mean, one of the things that as soon as I saw the space and things are still being constructed, I've got young kids. It's going to be a really amazing place to go in, tour the artist studios, bring my kids in, grab a cup of coffee. There's a lot of natural light. It's big, it's open. There's already this kind of nice vibe there. I can totally see this as just being one of those places that can only exist on the scale that you're talking about, right? Where it's like something special, something that has soul, something that has a spirit. And I got that sense.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So anyways, Kate and Jon, thank you so much. Lou, thank you so much. And I'm going to see everybody next week on the 495. Thank you.
Thank you.